Next, we're going to move on to item number 4, traffic calming on Condensia Street. And I believe we have public comments for this item.
Yes, Chair Gokin, I do have 4 public comments to read into the record.
Okay, so we're going to do the presentation and then public comments.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Kim. I'm the City Traffic Engineer, and with me to present this item is Miriam Jim, who is a Senior Engineer in our Traffic and Mobility Group. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. We are here to recommend a to the Traffic and Mobility Commission proposed traffic calming plan for Cadencia Street. And this is specifically from Delray Avenue to the north, 500 feet north of Paragua Street. Cadencia Street is located in the southwest or southeast portion of Carlsbad. Cadencia Street in its entirety extends from Romeria Street to Paseo Capuchina. It is largely classified as a residential street, except for the portion between Delray Avenue and 500 feet north of Paragua Street, and that is the focus of this traffic calming plan. 2 residential segments of Cadencia have previously gone through phase 2 of our Carlsbad residential traffic management program. Here is a location map showing the project area. You can see that in blue, we have 25-mile-per-hour residential area segments. And in between those 2, we have a segment that's posted at 40 miles per hour from Delray to the north in orange. That is our area of focus. Just to let the commissioners know, this proposed project is not intended to replace any existing projects. In blue, in 2017, we did a traffic calming project that installed 3 speed cushions on Cadencia Street. That project was brought forward to our Traffic and Mobility Commission in 2017, and construction of those speed cushions was completed in 2018. Down in green, there is also a small portion of Cadencia Street in which we brought forward to our Traffic and Mobility Commission a traffic calming plan for 2 speed cushions and some striping. Traffic and Mobility Commission approved that, and we're moving forward with that project, and we expect the construction of those speed cushions on that portion of Cadencia to be complete by the end of this year. Because residents expressed concerns about speedings along this non-residential segment of Cadencia Street in the past, City has deployed temporary speed feedback signs to address these concerns on a temporary basis. Just to let you know, we did do some recording of the vehicle speeds during the time that these temporary speed feedback signs were deployed, and we found that critical speed was observed to be 41 miles per hour in both the northbound and southbound direction. Because there is a speed differential of 15 miles per hour between the residential and non-residential segments of Cadencia Street, we thought that traffic calming measures would be appropriate to try to reduce the speed residential. After the proposed project is implemented, staff will conduct speed measurements to see if there's possibly an opportunity to lower the speed limit from 40 miles per hour to perhaps 35 miles per hour. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our Senior Engineer, Miriam Jim.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as John mentioned, we received residents' complaints, and after we reviewed this, we propose, this slide actually show you the traffic calming concept plans that we propose. The 3 speed feedback signs proposed along this stretch of Cadencia Street. 1 in the northbound direction and 2 in the southbound direction. More signs, we propose more signs in southbound direction, of course, it's because of the downhill slope of the roadway. And a marked crosswalk with rectangular rapid flashing beacons is also proposed to address residents' concern and complaints that it is relatively hard for pedestrians to cross Cadencia Street because of the speed of the vehicles. And with that, next slide. So based on the information presented and the intent for us to reduce the speed differentials along Cadencia Street, staff recommends that the Traffic and Mobility Commissions approve the proposed traffic calming plans for Cadencia Street from Delray Avenue to 500 feet north of Piragua Street. And thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we're ready to answer any question that you may have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Jim. And let me see, I can see everybody's faces. And Kim, do I have any comments or questions from any commissioners on this presentation? And then we're going to go to the public comments. Let's start with Commissioner Pensier.
This is it's a residential neighborhood on both sides, but in between it's not residential, and yet there are still driveways there. I guess my question is, how do you decide whether this is residential or not? Is there a frequency of driveways that determine that, or intersections? How is that decided?
Great question, Commissioner Pensiers. That definition, we go by the California Vehicle Code. It specifically defines a residential district based on what you said, the density of driveways along a roadway, and also the distance of that residential home from the street. So if you don't have that density, then it can't be termed as a residential district, or if the homes are set too far back, it can't be termed as a residential street.
Okay, and then another question then is, since this is not a residential street, then you don't do the survey where you ask the residents if this is okay. In other words, they all support it, or is it just because the things you're doing are not really going to have much of a physical impact on the street?
That's a combination of both. Because we don't have the residential density, we really, that sample size for a survey would not be there. And also the impacts that we're putting on the street, we're not recommending any in-street features as such. So therefore, staff is not using a survey.
Okay, Commissioner Hunter, did you have a question?
I did. You said the critical speed on the road was 41 in a 40-mile-an-hour speed zone?
Based on the implementation of the speed feedback sign and the data that we recorded, the 85th percentile at that time was found to be 41 miles per hour.
That's with speed feedback signs?
Yes.
From a previous time?
I'm not sure exactly what time that was. It was probably within the past couple of years where we had deployed the speed feedback signs. But we do have an engineering and traffic survey that has its own official speed survey included in your staff report. And
yeah, I'm looking at that now. You know, northbound is nice and slow, but coming down that hill.
Yeah, we had an official 43 miles per hour. So I kind of wanted to highlight that you know, the temporary speed feedback signs, which are much smaller and not as noticeable as the permanent speed feedback sign, we were able to see a 2 mile per hour reduction, which doesn't seem like much, but when speed limits are set in 5 mile per hour increments, we feel like it's a very real possibility to perhaps get the speed down to 39 miles per hour, and then we'd be able to lower the speed limit.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Linke, do you have a question? No? Commissioner Vice Chair Perez.
Yeah, just a question on the in between Piragua and is it Venado? I noticed that there was a, I think it's like a rec center where there's a pool, tennis courts, and maybe a gym. Was there any set like crosswalks in that area? I know that there was like a mention like a little bit above Piragua, but it just seems to me that there might be, was there any concerns within the community about putting a sidewalk in between that area?
We have not received any specific request for sidewalk or crosswalks on Piragua Street or Venado Street itself.
Okay.
We have worked closely with that residential area. They did request a significant amount of red curb, and we work with the HOA since they have multiple driveways on both Piragua and Venado to address those site distance concerns on those driveways.
Okay.
But we haven't received a concern. We'd be happy to look at it if we were like that.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Kemp, I think what it is I'm just looking at it. It maybe just the north side of Cadencia versus the south side. Maybe the north side is just for, you know, that location is for the residential, the tennis courts and the swimming pool. So maybe it doesn't affect the people from on the south side. So just want to clarify. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Fowler.
So I'm curious, it's interesting that this street this area is sandwiched by two traffic calming features. And I just have a general question. So traffic calming things like speed bumps or whatever, speed pillows, things like that. So is it the general assumption it will not have any effect subsequent to somebody going through them, that they'll just speed up? Now, I understand that that's going up a hill, and so I would imagine people, you know, step on it to get more energy to get up the hill. But as a general principle, you don't assume that traffic calming is going to last any longer than the actual within a few feet of the feature. Or
I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, Commissioner Fowler, but the speed cushions that we have in our inventory for traffic calming are specifically designed for residential streets, which is 25 miles per hour. Staff would have concerns about putting in vertical deflection features on higher classified roadways in terms of speed. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but from our perspective, there'd be some issues with proposing vertical features as the speeds go higher. We feel like speed feedback signs in this case is a more appropriate traffic calming.
yeah, I understand that, and that's not quite my question. I was just curious that speed calming, you know, and again, it's complicated more by the hill there, I think, but you know, people driving down the street don't say, oh, now we're not in a neighborhood anymore, let's go, you know, or anything like that. That's a concept that the engineers have, right? But if I'm just driving down the street and I go as a general citizen and go through speed bumps and I slow down, and does that mean that most people just speed up right after they get through the features? Is that, or is that just special in this case where, well, there's a hill there and then people speed up to make it up the hill or whatever?
I think there is a possibility when you have a segment that has traffic calming, we try to approach that segment as a corridor and place our speed or traffic calming features at a regular space of about 300 to 500 feet. That stretch between Piragua down to Delray is much longer than that, and so we know that based on a roadway that's pretty much uninterrupted down a hill, that the speeds would likely increase between the two 25-mile-per-hour residential zones.
Okay, so the effective range of things like speed cushions or traffic calming is 300 feet basically is the idea.
Then that's based on the 25 miles per hour. We would
So it depends. Okay.
calculate it, you know, that spacing would increase as the speeds go up.
Okay. Any other comments or clarifying questions from commissioners? Okay, so before we go to public comments, because we haven't had much on the agenda items, public comments on the Zoom, our Traffic and Mobility Commission procedures states that for each item on the agenda, City of Carlsbad staff will present the report to the Traffic and Mobility Commission, and the Traffic and Mobility Commissioners may then ask clarifying questions about the staff report in advance of the public outreach. So I'm sorry, Nathan, I'm scared to touch anything. I tried to message you back, but my computer, I don't want to jinx it. So just to clarify of why I went to commissioner comments before the public outreach. So now we're going to go to public comments, and then we're going to go again to commissioners if anybody have questions based on the comments.
Sounds good. Thank you for the clarification, Chair Gokin. We have received 4 emails received as public comment for this agenda item, and I will read them into the record now. Okay, so first, Catherine and I have been a resident for more than 11 years on Cadencia Street. Our property is located just 3 houses down from the Venado intersection. We have a full view of the last 50 yards of the steep grade, approximately 10%, and of that grade's impact upon the speeds of all vehicles, cars, trucks, bicycles, and skateboards. Many traveling at speeds greater than 50 miles an hour, and sometimes several at one time. In addition, when large vehicles are parked above and below our driveway, blocking our vision, the risk is compounded. We have lost a mailbox to a reckless driver in which its concrete pedestal, 100 pounds, was pushed uphill 100 feet to the middle of our driveway entrance. It is risky to check the mail during broad daylight and especially during winter darkness, always watching the speed acceleration of the approaching cars. For more than 5 years, we have participated with our neighbors, many of which have been involved for more than 10 years in petitioning the city to address our traffic concerns. The speed signs currently in place are disregarded. We are frustrated by the city's lack of action, as well as lack of visibility in resolving these traffic issues brought to you by this neighborhood for over 10 years. The lack of substantial action by the city has resulted in a recent injury accident at the corner of Del Rey and Cadencia Streets. Stop signs placed at Venado and Del Rey are necessary to control the traffic and traffic speeds. Sincere regards, Dan and Catherine Weaver, Cadencia Street residents. Second, regarding the August 3rd meeting and Cadencia Street situation, I have resided in the middle of the Cadencia Street Speedway for 23 years and interacted with all my neighbors and the Carlsbad City Council extensively for the past decade regarding this public safety hazard. We are all frustrated with the lack of action that has characterized the city government on this issue. The noise, speeding, and reckless driving down this steep and long hill, as well as up the hill, has not only been a safety hazard, but has destroyed our quality of life and our property values. The current plans the city and John Kim have finally agreed to are two-pronged: speed bumps for the lower portion near Del Rey intersection and speed display lights and crosswalks for the middle portion of Cadencia. While both need done ASAP, they will not be sufficient. The speed going north will commence right after the Del Rey intersection speed bump, and speed displays will be ignored. The same is true going south with regard to the speed displays. A 4-way stop sign at the intersection with Venado Street would solve both prongs of the problem, but it seems that SOPs are more important than public safety in Carlsbad. This will be regretted if the next accident causes severe injuries. Having said that, we must at least have what John Kim suggested ASAP. We have sent you pictures of the most recent accident that has happened at the Del Rey intersection. Both cars were totaled, and luckily there were no severe injuries. I would like to attend the virtual meeting on August 3rd. Paul Morongos, Cadencia Street resident. I'd like to express my opinion that it's taken too long for the city to implement its traffic calming project on Cadencia Street, and that the city's latest proposal is taking things in the wrong direction. We recently had serious accidents on Cadencia Street, mere feet from where the city has proposed to place a speed bump at a community meeting back in January. My feeling is that the considerable suffering of the poor woman involved in the accident could possibly have been avoided if the city had stuck to its original timeline for implementing the project proposed. I learned from your agenda packet that the city is now proposing speed indicator signs on Cadencia. My hope is that these signs are not being offered as replacement for more physical restrictions to speeding, speed bumps, roundabouts, etc. My interpretation of the plan for Cadencia is in the agenda packet is that the expected 5 mile per hour reduction in average speed granted by the speed indicators will solve the public safety problem. I think this logic is flawed. Our problem is not speed averages, but rather the high speed outliers that are the threat to safety. The information in the agenda packet gives me no confidence that the speed indicators can address this. It is more reasonable to expect that the individuals doing the dangerous speeding are going to ignore those signs just as they ignored existing speed limit signage. If these signs are yet another change in direction for the speed calming project, I believe that they will waste city resources and only serve to further delay a solution to our safety problem. Respectfully, Richard and Mimi Stanson, Cadencia Street residents. We have lived at 7535 Cadencia Street for over 35 years. Vehicle speed has always been a problem and the city has been remarkably slow to respond. Crossing Cadencia and entering and exiting our driveway remains very dangerous. I understand that speed cushions, signage, and lane stripings have been approved and should be going out to bid after many, many delays for the lower portion of Cadencia Street in the somewhat near future. We have still made no progress on the portion of Cadencia Street above Delray Avenue. We need to move ahead with speed control in this portion. I understand the city is considering installation of 3 permanent speed indicator signs in that segment. I seriously doubt these will have much effect. One only needs to drive on La Costa Avenue where these signs have been placed to see how little effect they have. If this is the best we can do at this time, I am in favor of it, but I feel a more definitive approach is needed. This is an ongoing dangerous condition that the city has been aware of for years. The city is ignoring public safety and incurring significant liability risk pertaining to this issue. Along with the rest of the residents on Cadencia Street, we look forward to prompt resolution of this safety issue. Sincerely, Philip R. Goodman. Please note that Victor Lance sent an email agreeing with Philip Goodman's statement above. And that concludes the public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. I have a couple of questions before I open it again to the commissioners if they have questions. On the engineering and traffic survey, under special conditions, it states that there's a school bus stop. Do we have school bus stops in Carlsbad?
I am not specifically aware of a school bus stop, and that's not saying whether it exists or does not exist. I'll take a look at that.
Okay. This is done in 2014, I believe, so I'm not sure if it's still valid, but we just have to check to make sure that what the information on there is valid. If that's not valid, then we gotta make sure that the rest of it is valid. That's on it. The other thing, based on the public comments, they're not sure that the existing proposal is going to work. Do we have a time frame for when this project will take place, be completed?
We still have to go through the design process. I think for normal projects of this size, we would estimate 6 to 8 month period of design and then going to construction, just roughly. It's not a huge project in terms of the number of speed feedback signs, but the proper engineering design has to be done, and we have to prepare the associated contract documents as well. Another thing to note is that we've mentioned this before, but going forward, our speed feedback signs are going to have the ability to communicate speed data back to us. And that's something that we haven't done before. And so we recognize this as a potential collaboration with our police department to give them a speed profile of a street These speed feedback signs work 24 hours a day. We don't need a person on staff with a radar gun. It works around the clock. And so we project that using this data, working with the police department, that we'd be able to identify timeframes in which the outlying speeding behavior would occur, and therefore be able to apply a more focused speeding enforcement upon Cadencia Street once we get the new speed feedback signs installed.
Okay, because that was my follow-up comment. Is there any way that we can analyze if this proposal is effective? So if we are able to check the speeds, then we can, after, I'm guessing maybe a year from now, between the design and the construction, we should be able to see if the speeds have lowered, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Do we have any other comments or questions, Commissioner Vice Chair Perez?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, just thinking about that location where you were mentioning about the school bus, I think we need to just clarify if that's part of the Carlsbad Unified School District or it's part of San Diego. I'm trying to quickly look at the information, but it might be in the San Diego location, so I don't know if that has any weight or anything like that. I just wanted to clarify.
And they have school buses?
Maybe. I don't. I'm just wondering if we need to just review that, but I just wanted to clarify, make a point.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Linke?
Yeah, so I had seen a post on Nextdoor with the accident that was described by the residents and reported it to Mr. Kim, and then I reported back on Nextdoor the measures that were being done. I don't know, I have the picture if anyone cares to see it of the car crash, if I could provide it after the fact if anyone would find it useful, but one of the issues there too was that there was a large RV parked near the intersection. The accident occurred at the Del Rey Cadencia Street intersection, where there's a stop sign on Del Rey, but there was a large RV parked. Probably the sight distance was not sufficient from Del Rey. So I don't know if another thing would be putting red curb in near that intersection, because that was the main concern on Nextdoor, which is south of the portion where the Venado crosswalk would go. But it's sort of at the end of the part where there's a high speed limit. Beyond that, I'm just realizing now that I had recused myself from the lower Cadencia project because I live not too far from there, so I'm not sure. Maybe I need an opinion from the attorney if maybe I need to recuse myself from this one as well. I'm probably 4 blocks.
The closer you live to the site, the more we get into FPPC issues. So ultimately, the decision is one that falls with the council member or the commissioner. But the closer you get, the more likely it is that there might be a reason to refuse. But
Yep.
the decision is yours.
Yeah, perhaps I should recuse myself. Just need to look into the rule. I think there's a foot rule, like 500 feet, and I think I maybe
there is. Yeah, in an abundance of caution, you could, but right now I could try and pull the rule, but I would be waiting a little bit for me to.
All right, yeah. I'll just recuse myself for now. Sorry about that. I forgot about that.
Do you feel like this is a personal interest in any way for you to recuse yourself? Does this affect, do you have a preference, either or it can be?
There probably isn't, but I'm the president of the homeowners association that many of the residents that were commented on. So that's what maybe
Okay.
just popped into my head, maybe, and I don't know who they are. So
And typically, if there's a financial interest, that's when we really start to, the real basis for a recusal is in, when it can be said that someone has a financial interest in the outcome of a decision, that's typically when the
okay,
commission members recuse.
there's no issue there.
Oh.
And I think I'm more than 500 feet, so I'll just stick with it.
Commissioner Hunter.
Just on the legal side, if you're going to recuse yourself, there shouldn't be any comments or anything else going on, right? So we've already
Yeah, I already ruined that.
we've already eaten that, part of the
Yeah.
So it's
Sorry, I didn't think of it until later, but I just measured it on Google Maps and I'm more than 500 feet from the project and I have no financial interest. So there's my disclosure.
It's up to you. And just by way of discussion for purposes of us being on Zoom, if the commissioner does need to recuse, what they would do is they would click off their video, go on mute. I think that's the advice that we've been providing
Okay.
for purposes of recusal.
Okay.
Well, we know next time. I don't think there is any personal interest, so I think Commissioner Linke is good to stay on the voting for this one. Do we have any other comments or questions from any other commissioners before we go for a vote?
just on the same note, if he just wants to abstain from the vote rather than recusing, it might relieve anything else that might happen out of this. Just a thought process.
I like that idea too, Commissioner Linke. You would know. I do. The only thing that it's can be a little bit more complicated is if you are the president of the association and you feel like you're going to have some residents that are pro and some against. You do not want to have any personal choice there. But anyway, so with that, do I have anybody making a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation as written.
I'll second that.
Okay. Please note, Commissioner Hunter made the motion to approve the recommendation for item 4 on the agenda, which is the traffic calming on Condensia Street, and Commissioner Fowler seconded. Can we go for a vote?
Commissioner Wanamaker,
Aye.
Commissioner Linke,
Abstain.
Commissioner Fowler,
Yes.
Commissioner Pensiers,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Vice Chair Perez,
Yay.
Chair Goken.
Yes. Please note that it passed 6-1 with Commissioner Linke abstaining.